You will be able to use this method for any chocolate. You don't have to use the ones that I have, because I'm going to show you how to set up your template so that you can make it work with any chocolate that you might want to use. You also don't need to own a printer in your house, but you will need access to one. So I will show you a workaround for that as well. And although we're going to be using Cricut Design Space, you also won't even need a Cricut machine. So if you have a Cricut Joy, you will still be able to use this print then cut tutorial for your chocolate wrappers. My name is Kelly Rossouw, and let's get clacking. Now, the things that we're going to need in this tutorial. Number one is optional, and that is a Cricut machine. We're also going to need a printer or access to a printer. The material we're going to print on is 115 GSM single-sided glossy photo paper. I find that this is pretty much the cheapest that you can go for a nice glossy product and still have it the most durable for what we need. I like to use strong adhesive double-sided tape. If you're not going to be using your Cricut machine, you will need a way to cut your chocolate wrapper. I prefer to use a guillotine as it gives the absolute best, crispest result. Most crisp result. But if you don't have a guillotine, you can use a paper trimmer. It's not my favorite method because the paper trimmer tends to tear the paper as it glides through the paper. So a guillotine is first place, paper trimmer second, scissors third. And then last but not least, you're going to need the chocolate that we're going to wrap up. I have 2 different chocolates that I'm going to show you. They're both pretty much the same size. So like I said, this template will fit for most chocolates. When starting off the actual design of your chocolate wrapper, I like to start with the inspiration or the background and the images, all the fun stuff. Well, for me, that's the fun stuff. And this is where I like to use Creative Fabrica. Now, this is not sponsored by them, but I have a subscription to Creative Fabrica, and I honestly find it so incredibly valuable to find all of the images and things that I need to use for my projects. I also create classes for them and have worked with them quite a bit, and I genuinely love the company. So I will share my link below for a subscription deal that they've given me to offer to my audience, to you guys. It works out to $4.99 a month, so $5 if you take the annual subscription, and it is well worth it because when your subscription is active, you can download and use whatever you want. So I'm going to search for the design that I want, and I want to be a unicorn theme because why not? So I'm just going to search for unicorn, and I can use literally anything that pops up here. But the type of background that I like to use on my chocolate wrappers is something that is a little bit more muted. Because in Cricut Design Space, you can't reduce the transparency of something, which hopefully they'll introduce in the future. Having a very bold background means that everything else on your design is not necessarily going to stand out as much. And while you can absolutely go for a bold background if that is your choice, I want to show you a little bit more of a muted background. So under the categories on the side, I'm actually going to choose the filter that says backgrounds. And it's going to be a lot easier to search for what I want. Ooh, this first one is absolutely perfect, but you can see just how many different results that you get. And I mean, 99% of these are perfect for what I want. And it's actually going to be difficult to choose. Okay, I'm definitely loving this one as we can have the sparkles at the top and the bottom of the chocolate wrapper. So I'm going to just download this one and it'll download to my computer. There we go. And I'm going to open that. And once it's finished downloading, I'm going to open that again and save some or all of them to my computer. Now I'm going to go back to Creative Fabrica and untick the backgrounds and look for a cute little unicorn image that we can use on this actual design. And of course, because we don't have any filters set, this is showing me images, fonts, backgrounds, everything to do with unicorns. So I'm going to save a font as well as an image that we can use in Design Space on our chocolate wrapper. And once I've chosen my elements, I'm just going to download both of them. And when it comes to the font, I'm just going to double click the font and click install. If you have Design Space open on your computer, you will need to close it and open it again so that Design Space will recognize that you've installed a new font. Now, the first thing that I like to start off with these projects is to have the measurements of the actual wrapper that we need. So in order to do that, you can follow one of two methods. The first one is my favorite, and that is to take your chocolate, very carefully open the wrapper, and the next step is very important, and that is to eat the chocolate. And then measure the wrapper once it's all laid out in front of you. And that'll give you the most accurate sizing of the chocolate wrapper that it needs to be in order to be exactly the same size as this. If you want or need to use every chocolate that you have bought, you don't have to actually unwrap the chocolate and then measure the wrapper. You can just measure it without unwrapping it. So you just take a ruler, measure it from side to side, make sure to try and keep the wrapper as flat as possible. On the flat end of the wrapper where it's glued together on the sides, that is the part that you want to measure and at least double that measurement. And of course, it's important to remember that when it comes to wrapping the chocolate, we don't take the wrapper of the chocolate off. We just cover the wrapper that's already there. And once you have your measurements, we're going to add a square to our canvas. So we're going to click on Shapes and click on Square. And this is going to serve as the size of our wrapper. So the Kit Kat that I have measured is just under 15 centimeters. I like to add a little bit extra as I'd rather have my chocolate wrapper a little bit wider or just too short. So instead of 15 centimeters, I'm actually going to make this 16. In most cases, adding an extra centimeter on the sides is not going to hugely affect the size of the printing area, so I'd rather just err on the side of caution. Now, the width of the chocolate wrapper is 4 centimeters. So that we have to make sure that is doubled over top and bottom. So we have 8 centimeters. Now that is just enough to cover the chocolate. That's not enough to join the chocolate wrapper at the back. That flap is around 1 centimeter. So again, it's a number that we have to double. So we need to have at least 10 centimeters. So I'm going to unlock the proportions on that side and I'm going to change the height to, let's say, 10.5. Again, I'd rather have an extra half a centimeter than not be able to work with my chocolate wrapper. So this is the size of the wrapper that we're going to work with. And at this size, we will easily be able to get 2 wrappers on a page, which is fantastic. So we're going to start with designing our wrapper. I'm going to take all of the elements that we downloaded from Creative Fabrica and upload them into Cricut Design Space. So I'm going to click on Upload in the bottom left-hand corner and then Upload Image. Now you can either drag and drop the images in here or you can browse for them and add them in. I'm just going to browse for them. I like to use the PNGs as far as I can because they're a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to select Complex as this has shading in many colors. Now, because we've added a PNG, we don't need to remove the background of this. If you want to preview the image, you'll see it's just the silhouette of the actual unicorn. So I'm just going to go Hide Cut Image and I don't need to remove anything. If your background is white, you will need to remove it by using the background remover or the little wand selection tool. And if you're wanting a video tutorial on how to do that, I will leave one up at the top here for you. So I'm going to click Apply and Continue. And because we want to retain the colors of this image, we don't want to just have the plain cut outline. We want to actually retain the colors and use the colors. I'm going to click on Print Then Cut Image. It already has an image name, so I don't need to add that, and I'm going to click Upload. And you can do the same for any elements that you have added. When you're uploading these kinds of images, don't change anything. Always add it as a print then cut and type in unicorn as a name. Once it has been added to your canvas, reduce the size quite a bit so that it roughly fits what you need it to be. Now I'm going to make the fun template the same width as our actual template. So I'm going to make it 16 and I'm going to send it to the back so I can see what colors are going to be used. And you can decide whether you want more of the purpley greeny colors or more of the colors at the bottom. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to select them both, align to the center, and then I'm going to align it to the top or the bottom, whatever makes you happy. And then with only those 2 objects selected, I'm going to hit Slice. Move that away and delete it as we don't need it. We don't need that. And we're then only left with the base of our wrapper. I'm going to zoom in so that we can see what we're working with. And now is where you add all the fun things onto your wrapper, keeping in mind that this section of your wrapper, approximately 4 centimeters in width, maybe a little bit less. This section here, where this gray block is, that is what you will see on the top of your wrapper. So if you've got any important information, you want to keep it here. So like your unicorn images, that's where you would want to place them. That is this part of our chocolate wrapper. Something at the top and something at the bottom will then be mostly at the back of your chocolate wrapper and hidden underneath this little flap here. So not all of it is going to be visible. So don't fill the entire chocolate wrapper with things. Just keep the main elements that you want to have in the middle of the wrapper. And then maybe have something like, if you wanted to have a barcode or a nutritional information, something like that, you would have it at the top or the bottom of your design. When designing the things to go onto the chocolate wrapper, I always use the text function and type in something nice. I'm going to change the font to the one that we downloaded. So I'm going to click on the font section, click on System, and type in the name of the font. Make it a little bit smaller. And I like to use offset here to complement the design nicely. So I'm going to change the color to black. And then I'm going to select the offset button, reduce the offset quite a bit so that it's not so big, and click apply. I don't want it to be gray, I want it to be white. So I'm going to once again change the color to white. And then I'm just going to add some fun things onto the wrapper to make it look fun. And I'm going to do the same as what I did with the titles. I'm going to change the text to black, do an offset on this one. And with this offset, I might make this offset a little bit smaller as well. So maybe 0.05. And I normally just play around with it until I'm happy. And then I'm going to change that offset to white. Move it so that it is on the wrapper itself. If you have elements that work with each other, what you can do is group them while you're busy working with them, so you don't have to keep selecting them every time. You can also decrease the space between the lines by using the line space feature. So I just change mine to a -5 or a random number and go from there. And once you have all of the elements that you want on your chocolate wrapper, we're going to take note of a few things. Number one, we have lots of layers in the layers panel. If you're going to be using your Cricut to cut this out, in order for the Cricut to cut it out correctly and just cut the outside square, we need to make sure that we have one layer that is solid so that it knows that it is a square, just like you're cutting a square out of vinyl. You need to have a solid square for it to cut a solid square. We have a solid square at the back because that is our picture. But all of the elements in front of that and on top of that aren't solid. If we had to attach this, they would all cut out individually, which is absolutely not what we want. We need to select everything and flatten it. And you see how we just went from many different layers to only one layer. We have one flattened layer. That is what we need if you're going to be using this as a print and cut on your Cricut, as in you're going to use your Cricut to cut it. You can absolutely cut it on your Cricut, add score lines and have a zigzag edge. I find that that's a little bit of an overkill, as you can use zigzag scissors to get a similar effect. So I like to cut my Cricut out in this regard. Bad choice of words. I like to not use my Cricut as it's kind of overthinking the end result. It's just a square. I can easily cut it out with my guillotine. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to right click and duplicate so that we're cutting out two at a time. I'm going to move it into the top corner, move the second one just underneath it. I'm going to select them both, right click and attach, because we've got two print and cut layers. So we want them to stay in that location. So you have to flatten them first before you attach them. It's really, really important if you're going to be cutting it with your Cricut. I'm then going to save my design, as I really don't want to lose this once I've gone to the cutting stage and then something goes wrong. I'm going to click save. And then I'm going to click make it. And now that it has the print and cut page screen, we don't need to change anything here, so we can just click continue. We now need to send it to our printer. So I'm going to click send to printer. And if you don't have a printer connected to your computer, you need to click on the drop down and then use the Microsoft Print to PDF option. If you don't have that, or if you're using a Mac, you can download print to PDF programs that will allow you to print it to a PDF. And if you're finding this content helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps to allow other people to be exposed to this information as well. I do lots of Cricut tutorials on my channel, so consider subscribing, as that shows me what kind of videos you like and what kind of videos I should make more of. And then if you're wanting to save it to a PDF, you can then just click print. Now, I'm not saving it to a PDF. I'm actually going to print this on my printer at home. So I'm going to select L3150. Now, I'm using an Epson L3150, which is an ink tank printer or an eco tank printer. They are a lot more economical, and you can get hundreds of prints as opposed to just a couple of prints with your cartridge printers. So ink tank printers, where you've got to pour the ink into the actual literal ink tank, are great printers to go for, and I will leave links to some of the best ones down in the description. I'm going to also tick the use system dialog, as I like to be able to chop and change my printer settings or double check them because I use lots of different paper. I'm going to leave bleed on, as that helps me to achieve a better edge on my print. It adds like a millimeter or so of extra print to the side of your square. So if you were cutting this with your Cricut, you would have a better end result, and it wouldn't maybe show just a little bit of white on the edge. So I'm going to click print, and then the printer dialog will pop up, just like that. I'm going to then click on preferences, and the setting that I like to use for the 115 glossy GSM photo paper is photo paper glossy. I leave the quality on high, but I do turn the high speed setting off. And I'm going to then load the paper into my printer because there is none in it at the moment, and then I'm going to click print. And if you're going to be cutting it with your Cricut, this is where you would load it onto your mat and load it into your Cricut. But again, like I said, it's so much easier to just cut it with a guillotine, so maybe watch the next few seconds before cutting it on your Cricut to see how easy it's actually going to be. Now that our chocolate wrapper has been printed out, I'm going to use my mini guillotine to show you how to cut out the wrapper without using your Cricut. So I normally just do kind of a very rough cut on the first one, just to kind of see where I am, and that one was pretty much perfect. And now I have one edge exposed. So what I can do is line it up a little bit better. Well, I need to cut off this side as well because it doesn't quite fit. So I'm just going to cut off that section there. And then I'm going to line up the edge of the metal with the edge of the picture, and then make sure that it goes all the way up to the top. Perfect. And it just gets easier from here. So we now have 2 chocolate wrappers. And of course, it's important to remember that when it comes to wrapping the chocolate, we don't take the wrapper of the chocolate off. We just cover the wrapper that's already there. So what we do is we flip this now over. We can place our chocolate on the inside just to see where it goes. And we know that we need to put a row of double-sided tape here on this side, and also double-sided tape on that side. But we only really need to put the double-sided tape in the middle here. I had my scissors a second ago. Where are they? So I'm using 6mm double-sided red tape. I find the red tape works really nicely, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to cut around 4 centimeters, and I'm going to stick it in the middle as close to the end as I can. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Now, because we don't need to worry about sealing it entirely, this doesn't need to be perfectly exact. And then we need to seal this bottom part here as well. And you can have the tape just a little bit away from the edge, but not too far. And try and get it to go from one side to the other. I'm going to then take off this piece of double-sided tape, and with the chocolate in the wrapper, I'm going to join up these parts here. You see how that part flaps over just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this part of the double-sided tape and squash that down together. Press that down as far as you can get it to go. And then do the same thing on this side as well. Remove. And there's obviously lots of other ways to do this. This is just the way that I prefer doing it. And we're going to squash that down so that that joins there as well. If any of parts stick out, you can just trim them off like that. And there you have your chocolate wrapper. And you can see what I mean by you don't want to go any further than that because you won't really be able to see anything on those sides there. So we have our contains one gift of love and then your nutritional information, and we hope you had fun on the other side. If you do want the signature zigzag edges, you can use a pair of zigzag scissors to achieve this look. These scissors are not very sharp, so I'm not going to get the same effect. But I can show you. It should be a little bit better on a piece of paper that I haven't yet stuck together. So as you can see, very badly zigzagged, but like I said, these scissors are very old and very blunt. So if you get ones that are nice and sharp and work, you'll be able to get your nice zigzagged edges, even though you haven't run it through your Cricut. But if you want to know how to make a chip packet wrapper, check out this video on your screen here. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon.